You might have noticed in our conversation so far that our interest is a little broader than what you probably saw back in your high school algebra class, even college algebra class. When those classes talk about systems of linear equations, they're pretty tightly focused on the ones that have a single unique solution, right? Where we're looking at this more broadly, right? And you'll see more of this as we go along here. The systems that have infinitely many solutions can actually be just as interesting, right? So, in this lecture, we're going to take a more detailed look, not just at the solution set, but we're going to take a look at the structure of those solutions, right? So to do that, we're going to start off by looking at a specific category of linear equations, what we call a homogeneous system. Right, a homogeneous system is one where the constant vector, so we're on the right-hand side of the equals in the matrix equation, is what we call the zero vector. In other words, it's made up entirely of zeros, right? And the non-homogeneous case, that's the opposite, right? It's the case where that constant vector is not the zero vector, right? Where there's at least one non-zero entry in it. So the first thing that hopefully just jumps right out to you about these homogeneous systems is that they always have solutions. Right? They are always consistent. If nothing else, the zero vector itself is always the solution to a homogeneous system. Okay, so that's what we call, it's got a name, it's what we call the trivial solution. So our interest here, right, is going to be looking at the bigger question, when are there non-trivial solutions to a homogeneous system of linear equations? So let's take a look at an example here, right? This is the augmented matrix corresponding to a homogeneous system of linear equations. You can tell it's homogeneous because that masked column is entirely zeros. And if you go through the process, right, you do our row reduction algorithm, put this into the reduced row echelon form, it's going to look like this. Okay, so you can see here we have one free variable, that's going to be x3. And we have two base variables, x1 and x2. So the solution to this is x3 can be anything, x2 has to be 0, and coming from the top row there, x1 plus x2 minus 2x3 has to equal 0. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to leave the x2 equals 0 alone, that's fine. I'm going to put 0 in for x2 in the second equation and then solve it for x1. Right, so if we do that, we get this for our solutions. Right, x3 can be anything, x2 has to be 0, and x1 has to be 2 times x3. Now that's fine. That's a perfectly good algebraic solution. But remember I said we want to talk about structure. Right, so to get an idea of the structure of the solution set, I'm going to rewrite this using our vector language. Right, so in vector terms, the solution x is equal to the vector 2x3, or that's the x1 value. I get 0 in the x2 spot, and just x3 in the x3 spot. That's a free variable. Right, we can put anything in there for x3, and that determines the other two values. Now, notice what I did here. I took that x3 that everybody has in common and factored it out. Right? So what I did is I rewrote the solutions as a scalar times a vector. And we've seen this situation before. Right? The span, you use our linear algebra language, the span of the vector 2, 0, 1 is a line. Yeah, so the solutions to this system of linear equations are any values on the line represented by this vector equation. And I just want to point out here, right? This line does pass through the origin. Right? If we let x3 equal 0, then x comes out to the 0 vector. So that is a solution, just like I said, it always would be for a homogeneous system. Okay, so let's look at something a little bigger. Take a look at this one. Okay, if we, again, go through our row reduction algorithm, it turns into this. Okay, so now we have two free variables and one base variable, right? But again, I'm gonna do the same approach, right? This tells me that my solutions have to satisfy this equation where x2 and x3 are free, so they can be any pair of numbers that I like. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to solve it for x1. Right, if we solve it for x1, it becomes x1 equals negative 4x2 plus 3x3. Okay, good. Again, I want to talk about structure. Right, so to do that, I want to rephrase this in terms of vectors. Okay, so in vector language, this is what my solution looks like, right? X2 and X3 are free, so they're just on the rows by themselves. And X1 has to be that linear combination of X2 and X3. Now, that's maybe not as informative as we'd like it to be, right? So here's what I'm going to do. Okay, I'm going to split this up. I'm going to split this up into a vector that just has x2s and a vector that just has x3s, and then I'll add them together, right? So you can hopefully confirm for yourself real quick, right? If you add those vectors together, you do get back to the original one. Now I can do what I did with our previous example. I can take the x2s out of the first vector, the x3s out of the second vector, and now, once again, I have written my solution as a linear combination of two vectors. So my solution, if we go a little further and again use our linear algebra terminology, the solution set is the span of those two vectors. As we saw before, right? The span of two independent vectors. We'll talk more about exactly what linear independence means later on in this chapter. But the span of two linearly independent vectors is a plane. Right, and again, you can see, just like we have with the line, this is a plane that goes through the origin. If you let x2 and x3 both be 0, then x becomes the 0 vector. On to looking at the non-homogeneous situation, I want to revisit just a little more terminology. This is the example we looked at on the previous slide. And I've written the situation in two ways. The left-hand one is the original, that's the system of linear equations. It's kind of a weird one because there's only one equation, but yeah, okay, it still meets the definition. That's what we would call the implicit version of the system, right? It's the implicit way of writing the solutions. The way I've got here in the middle, once we've solved this, right? We've written this as x, the solution equals something. This is what we would call the explicit version of the system. So there's actually another phrase we'll use to describe these. We'll also refer to this as the parametric version of the solution, or sometimes more explicitly, the parametric vector equation. Right? And the parameters here are the x2 and x3. Because remember, they're free. Right? They can be anything we want. I can put any numbers in there for x2 and x3 and get solutions. So sometimes we even take this a little further and kind of replace the x2 and x3 with just regular variables, with s and t, right? And we specify that s and t both can be any real number. Right? So that's really a way of emphasizing the parametric nature of the solution. Now let's take a look at the non-homogeneous case. And if you look all the way back to the first example that we did, you'll see that the coefficient matrix of this system is the same as the coefficient matrix of that original one. All that's changed is the solution, the B side, the last column, is no longer zeros. Okay, so if you go through the row reduction algorithm, you get this as the reduced row echelon version of the matrix. And again, you see we've got one free variable, it's going to be x3, and two base variables. Right? So the solutions are going to be x2 equals 2, x1 plus x2 minus 2x3 is equal to 3, and of course, x3 is the free variable. So if I go to that second equation, I replace the x2 with 2, and I solve this for x1, we get this as our final solution. x3 is free, x2 has to always be 2, and x1 is 2 times x3 plus 1. All right, so we can kind of continue with the same approach. Right, I'm going to write this as a vector solution So x is going to be this vector. And notice what's different now, we have constants in here other than 0. All right, so I'm going to split it up the same way I did before. I'm going to pull the x3 parts into one vector and everything else into another vector. Then I'm going to pull out the x3s, and our solution looks like this. Okay, now, here's where things get interesting. Look at the part of the solution that goes with the x3, the 2, 0, 1 vector, right? That's the same vector that we got as the solution to the homogeneous case. So what we've ended up here is a constant vector plus the solutions to the homogeneous case. All right, this is what's going to tell us some really great information about the structure of these solutions. All right, so what we're seeing here in this theorem. All right, so this theorem is saying if AX equals B is consistent, right, so we have a matrix equation that has solutions, and P is a solution to this equation, then the complete solution set is given by W equals that specific solution plus V sub H, where V sub H is any solution of the homogeneous equation AX equals 0. Okay, so what this is saying is we can take the solution to a system of linear equations and split it up into a numeric vector, a constant vector, plus the set of all solutions of the corresponding homogeneous case. Okay, so I'm going to go through a proof of this real quick because it's straightforward, very, very elegant little proof. Then I'm going to talk a little bit more about exactly what we're seeing from this theorem in a structural sense. Okay, so we're starting off with P is the solution of AX equals B. In other words, AP equals B. We also know that V sub H is the solution of AX equals 0. Okay, so we'll substitute VH in there for X, and we get AVH equals 0. All right, now remember, my claim is about that vector W. All right, so if we look at A times P plus VH, we can use the distributive property that we saw for these vector equations, matrix equations, distribute the A into it. Now, we know that AP is equal to B, and AVH is equal to 0. Right? So I put those in there, just substitution, and any vector plus the 0 vector is the original vector. Right? And that's what I needed to show. Right? I needed to show that P plus VH is a solution. In other words, when I put that into the equation, I get B back out. Well, I know at first glance it may look like this is saying that every consistent equation has infinitely many solutions, but just to be clear about this, right? Remember, it's possible that the 0 vector is going to be the only solution to the homogeneous case, right? And if VH has to be 0, then the solution to AX equals B is just that specific equation, and that's how we get the case where there is a unique solution to the system. The importance of this theorem isn't primarily to give us a new way to solve a system of linear equations. We already know perfectly well how to do that using the row reduction algorithm. Its importance is that it tells us what the entire solution set looks like. Right, so once we find one particular solution, every other solution is obtained by adding a solution of the corresponding homogeneous system. So geometrically, the solutions of a non-homogeneous system are a translation of the solution set of its homogeneous counterpart. So this is giving us really our first glimpse into the deeper structure underlying these systems of linear equations. Back to a geometry or a pre-calc class, you might remember learning about a whole class of methods for transforming one set into another, collectively called transformations. Now, we just saw one of these, a translation, where every element of a set is changed by adding the same fixed value to it. Well, in the next lecture, we're going to continue exploring the connection between matrices and by extension linear equations and these kinds of geometric transformations.